I would describe Vermont as just a nice, quiet place to live, where basically a person has to do a day's work for a day's pay.
Everybody knows everybody, and so it's always a friendly atmosphere.
A lot of people get here and they like the aesthetics and everything, and then they want to start changing it.
But we feel a lot more comfortable raising our children here than we would back in a big city.
My kids are getting the age now where they got to leave. There aren't that many jobs.
The problem being, of course, that when you get too many people, then you lose what you came here to have in the first place.
I like the trees, and there's a lot of forests and trees.
1791. 14 years after establishing an independent republic, Vermonters decide to join in a new venture as the 14th of the fledgling United States. There were only 85,555 people, including 16 slaves in Vermont then, and almost as many cows and sheep. Roads were mostly sand, stone, and mud, and all but a tiny fraction of Vermonters were farmers. In this, our 200th year, there were more than 500,000 Vermonters, 14,093 miles of paved roads, and only 15% of the workforce farms the land. Of course, nothing stays the same, but in 200 years, how far have we come? Where are we now? And where are we going?
My grandfather was in the farming business. My dad and my uncle took it over from there. And farming kind of went downhill, so my brother took it over. There wasn't really room enough for two of us to do it, so I moved on to into the excavating business. I would describe Vermont as just a nice, quiet place to live, where basically a person has to do a day's work for a day's pay. In general, it's just a good area, and you know, people are good to one another and they help each other out a lot, which I think is kind of a lot of Vermonteran people. They don't do something and help you and then wonder how much they're going to get paid for it.
I was born on the islands and lived here all my life except for when I was away in the service. And that was in the late 50s and early 60s when I was in the service. When I came home, there was 27 farms shipping milk in South Hero, and there's 9 of us left today. Today we have to be big and milk a lot of cows and produce a lot of milk to just keep up with the cost. We have dairy, and also we raise dairy replacements. And we grow pretty near all our feed except for our grain and concentrates that we feed the cows. I love it here. I love this island.
I grew up in New Hampshire. I was married to Scott in 1947, and we came to Vermont. He grew up in this area and loved it, and we settled in the Woodstock area and have been there ever since. I raised 3 sons with my husband and did various kinds of work, including working for the Vermont Extension Service, and then became a realtor, and that's what I do now. Taffsville is a small village which is part of the town of Woodstock. And it's a delightful place. It has always been filled with children. It is sort of a social unit. People share and care about each other.
It's comfortable. I mean, one can go out in the woods and feel that one is part of them, one belongs. It's just a good way to relax and feel like one is a real part of the world. You pretty much have to have people up here who want to be up here. So everybody pretty much starts out with the same feeling about the place. And this automatically gives you a sense of community, of belonging. Because you agree with everybody else in at least one sense anyway, that you want to be here. I came to Vermont when I was 5, so I have been here about 45 years now. There's no question there has been change. I have seen change just in the years that I have been here, even in St. Johnsbury. I mean, if I'd been in Burlington, there's unbelievable change from the earliest times that I remember Burlington. There has been a change. It is not all for the good.
Basically, the reason my husband and I came out here was because of the job opportunities. And we decided that we would give it 2 years before we decided whether we wanted, or 5 years before we decided whether we wanted to stay and settle down and buy a house or anything like that. And after the 2nd year we bought a house, we decided we really liked it here. So basically we stayed because we thought we had the best of both worlds here. We had the things that a big city could offer, but not all the things that go with it. When we go back to Houston or Buffalo, we're glad to come back to Vermont because we don't have the traffic and the crime and the pollution to deal with that we have back in our home cities. Certainly no state or no city is perfect or without any kind of danger or risk, but we feel a lot more comfortable raising our children here than we would back in a big city.
Well, I feel a real close connection to where I live. My great-grandfather grew up here, and my grandfather grew up here, and so did my dad. And so I really feel that's kind of part of a heritage, and it feels good. And, you know, growing up, I played in the fields and, you know, did all the things that boys growing up do. And so it's a very connected feeling that we're based right here, that we don't just live in these little boxes and we drive on tarred roads and we spend most of our time in heated environments. We are a part of this whole, you know, the whole outdoor. So by the senior year in college, I had decided that I wanted to take basically a hobby mill of Dad's. It was kind of a part-time thing and make it a full-time thing so I've been at that for, oh gosh, about 12, 13 years now.
Well, personally, I came here to go to St. Michael's College. I was offered a basketball scholarship to come here, and when I came from the city, New Jersey, I got here and I couldn't believe that this place existed, that there was a place outside of the cement cities, but never thought I'd stay. But after college, I married a local woman and decided to stay on, and just got to like the place and basically started a business here. I left IBM in 1969 along with Bob Hale, who was my partner and still is. Probably the dumbest thing I ever did that worked out wonderfully, because between Bob and I, we had 7 kids. I was 26 years old and he was 27 years old, and we had absolutely no money. I think Vermonters have a very strong work ethic, and that seems to show here.
Everybody knows everybody, and so it's always a friendly atmosphere. There's not a lot of crime in Vermont, as in if you go into a big city, anything like that. In a way, we're sheltered from that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of homelessness and things like that, and so at least for, like, you know, first part of your life, you don't have to, you can worry about other parts of being a kid and a teenager than worry about getting stabbed in school and things like that. So I like the small town atmosphere, and I think it'd be a real shame if a lot of the small towns are industrialized and go into big cities, because I think it's a really nice feeling to grow up in a small town.
This town was a heck of a town, you know. 40 years ago, 30 years ago, everybody helped everybody else. And we're just going too damn fast.
It's industrializing a lot, and so we're losing a lot of our, you know, our scenery and things like that to condominiums going up or just housing complexes going up.
I think you need controlled growth and controlled development if you want to continue to supply jobs.
I can show you farms where I mowed hay and today there's houses. Barns that I put hay in, today are houses. The barn's a house. When I went to school, there was about 4 houses on South Street till when I got to school, and today it's lined with houses. 7 o'clock in the morning, going off the island, it looks like any suburb of any other city.
I think the state's become very popular for business, and there's a big push to commercialize the state a lot more than it has been and industrialize it, and there's a big push back to keep the environment and the beauty of Vermont, you know, unspoiled by a lot of overdevelopment.
I wished it was real easy to say that society as a whole is the important thing, and that individual property rights are secondary, and I certainly can't say that, and yet I hate to see things get developed into a more urban or more modern setting.
It's an ethic that still exists in this state for the most part, and a desire to maintain the beauty, and I hope that will continue, our commitment to that. And I am happy that we have some control on development and growth.
A lot of people get here and they like the aesthetics and everything, and then they want to start changing it. They want sidewalks, and they want us to become a city, and it's ridiculous. That isn't what they come here for.
I think Vermont has got to get out and sell its case, because a lot of people, even the folks who live in New York, don't know much about the state.
I just think we got to quit selling ourselves.
I think the population is growing, but there's a lot of people that do come from out of state that we're very dependent upon, you know, for our skiing and whatever you have, our fall foliage and this type of thing.
I would hope that what happens in Vermont is it doesn't rely solely on tourism, that there are other areas of the workplace that we could invite to the state so that our young people would have the opportunity to participate in skilled jobs with good pay.
Some more industry in Vermont really would be helpful. We have a lot of skiing, that's the big industry, but tourism isn't enough. We need more jobs.
The tourists come in and then they like it, and so they want to move in and change things, and most people don't want things to change. They want it to stay, you know, pretty much the way it is. But I don't think the state could survive without tourism.
The worst thing about it is the ones that come have more money than the ones that were here. And the ones that were here find it hard to stay here because their incomes aren't as great, and they fall behind, especially in property taxing.
I think the workforce here is I would say much more loyal, but I think it's a very loyal workforce. We don't have a lot of competition for the kinds of people we hire in Vermont.
My husband is Mexican-American, and he found Vermont to be a paradise for him. There was virtually no prejudice when we moved up here.
The people that are coming in today, both parents are working. The kids are in baby school. They have to work to maintain their standard of living.
I would choose to work, whether it was a financial decision or not. Certainly finances is a big part of it, but I would like to make a contribution outside the home as well as in the home, so I think I would choose to work no matter what.
I think we have spent so much, and I think big business has made some very bad decisions, like the savings and loan and things like this, and I think it's just going to take us and our younger generations a long time to pay off this bill.
I mean, there's definitely a feeling that, you know, we're not good guys. Business people aren't good guys. And you feel that. I feel it.
The only thing we can do is just work together and work ourselves out of it. Somehow, some way, pay our bills.
You got to create, and it still is a capitalistic society, and I think it's business that makes things better for people in general. Done right. I mean, done under, I mean, I believe in regulations where proper, and I don't believe in worker versus employees. Nobody, in our company, nobody works for somebody else.
Well, the land's too valuable. You can't spend $500,000, $1 million for a place and expect to pay for it on selling milk. And my gosh, you know, it takes almost 500 pounds of milk to pay for an hour's work for a man to come fix a tractor.
Vermont life, Vermont, which is what everybody comes to see, with that mix of forests and the fields and the farms in between, and the nice red barns and the white houses and the cows, mostly black and white, some brown and white. But that needs, I'm afraid, needs to be helped. I don't think it can stand on its own.
With the way it's going, I see it being industrialized a lot. They putting in all these new bypasses and roads, wanting to put in new shopping centers. A lot of the farms may be taken away because of these things.
I think it's a loss for us who aren't in farming, because we're going to lose the beauty. I see it as a gain for that farmer's son and grandson, who now might have a chance to get the hell out.
A lot of farmers got older, and their sons didn't want it, so they developed it.
And I'm not sure we need the farms, but that's heresy in Vermont.
No, I don't think my boy wants anything to do with it.
Well, I think Vermont's clear weakness is the education system, because there isn't quite the funding that is needed.
Our budget for school is over $1 million, and the state gives us $18,000.
Money isn't the answer. Creative solutions are the answer. And I personally think that freedom of choice is the answer.
But we feel that there's really excellent choice of schools.
I like the trees, and there's a lot of forests and trees.
I like playing in the woods. I like the colors of the scenery.
I like the mountains, and I like the trees. Because, like, in the fall, I like when they turn colors.
200 years ago, Vermont was all forest. 100 years ago, Vermont was cleared. We clear-cut the state. And so we're about halfway in between now, which is, I think, by most people's estimation, is the prettiest, the nicest, the pleasantest way to be. But it does require actively trying to keep that. Give trees a chance, they'll cover everything. Give people a chance, they may cover everything too.
The big thing we're going to have to work on now is the pollution. It bothers me to think Burlington is done what they've done up and down the lake.
Landfills in Vermont are pretty, you know, that's a big topic because there's a lot of rural areas. So there's places for landfills, and they're, you know, proposing a lot of them in small farming communities.
Living in a family where two people work, and we have children, and you know, we admit we tend to go for the things that make our life any easier, which means that we're a highly disposable family and a highly disposable society, and we try to be conscientious about that.
We have a dump in Brattleboro that the cost has just gone up so atrociously much. I can understand, I guess, why sometimes when you go down the road and see where somebody's left a refrigerator off or something, it's getting so that a poor man can't even go to the dump, and I think that's a little bit ridiculous.
If you started recycling projects, you wouldn't have to be paying for the landfills.
I think people must have been burying garbage since, you know, they wore fur and dragged clubs around. I think there's got to be another answer, and I don't think it's unique to Vermont. I think that there's going to be a way, you know, some technology that's going to process waste in some sort of environmentally kind way.
I think we need creative solutions that have really been thought out, and then just like we run a company, you put a budget on these creative solutions.
I guess what we have to come to is some kind of a happy medium that everybody is happy with.
Well, I hate to say planning, because I know a lot of Vermonters, and even myself, don't like to be told what you can do with your land.
The rules and the regulations we have in this state, sometimes they're just too much.
But I think we got to realize that you just can't build a house on every piece of land in the state of Vermont.
And I think that what has saved us is our strong laws.
I think some planning is necessary. I think it should be done on a local and drawn up and drafted by the locals. I don't think it should be done by anybody in Montpelier or anybody in the region.
If the folks decide that the quality of life has to be balanced by, you know, both how many folks live here and what the job opportunities are and the environment and maintaining a beautiful state, then you might want to manage the growth.
When you build a plan, build it the way you think your town should look, and not, you know, build around your old buildings and your churches. Leave them, and so you can look at your heritage and what you had back there.
We have to have, I guess they call it progress, you know, more industry. You have to earn a living. And that means that we have to do things. We have to produce. We have to have something we can sell, which means if you want to keep doing that, you're going to have more people. The problem being, of course, that when you get too many people, then you lose what you came here to have in the first place. So it's, it may be a no-win situation. It may be that you live up here and hope that it lasts what you want out of it for your lifetime. And I'm afraid your kids, it's their lookout.
If it keeps up, we're going to lose the specialness of Vermont, and it's just going to be one big industry instead of the closeness that it has been in the past.
I think it's going to be basically the same. Just there's not going to be a lot of change. Vermont doesn't change as much as necessarily a lot of the other states do.
A lot of the kids in high school that I'm talking to, in order to find a job in the field that they want to go into, most of them have to look out of state.
No, I think most of them are leaving the state.
I haven't decided right off that I want to move away, but if I have to, I have to.
So I probably will come back, maybe settle down in a town maybe like Fairhaven.
Benson. Yeah, I'm going to stay in Benson. I like it. It's a nice town.
I think over the last 50 years, it used to be that you grew up and you lived wherever your parents were. And now I think with the shift in the job markets, I think people are much more inclined to think of their opportunities more on a United States or even a global level.
All too often we see our kids, my kids are getting the age now where they got to leave. If you get a good education here at the University of Vermont, and there's not that many jobs.
I think probably the thing that would be most, that I would like to see them experience is to keep them in touch with the world around them, and the natural world. I
would like them all to be like our forefathers and be independent in their thinking, and self-sufficient. You know, let's not ask government to do for us what we should be doing for ourselves.
One would hope that we might discover a way sometime soon where we can have all the good things in life and also have a progress, a growing economy, without having a growing or large, fast-growing population.
We're very close to millions of people who can come here very quickly now, since the interstates have come in. So we really have to look at that, and I think there are going to be big changes.
If we get 8–10 million people in here, if New York City all of a sudden moves up here all at once, there is nothing you can do.
But as far as growing to a sense where we just have to have more and more and more, I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy the way it is.
I think the future for Vermont is bright. That's why we plan to stay here.
I think we need to be alert and constantly vigilant about the health care, about our environment, what happens with solid waste and all of those things.
In the meantime, we can do things like trying to make sure that at least certain portions of the state and certain portions of the lifestyle are preserved.
And for some way, we just got to slow this all up and go back to some basics.
I think Vermont is on a good track right now in terms of trying to plan its future. And I'd like to think that in 100 years that it would have looked back on the last 100 years and say, gosh, we've kept a lot of the things that we wanted to keep, and yet we've got some things that we really are happy to have acquired over the last 100 years.
Right now I want to stay in Vermont.
In Vermont.
I would like to live in Connecticut.
Stay in Vermont. I want to be a storekeeper.
I want to be a dentist.
I either want to be a lawyer or work in a preschool.
I would own the preschool if I worked in it.
I want to be a writer or an author because I like writing books. Fantasy, magical lands, probably.
There's an old saying, probably not true, that people like to attribute to a Vermont farmer. An out-of-stater asks him for directions to, say, Plattsburgh Ferry. The answer, of course, is, you can't get there from here. 200 years ago, Vermonters set out on a course that has brought them, us, here. Where can we get from here?
I think the state's going to have to decide what kind of state it wants to become.
I think that Vermont needs to be progressive and needs to provide the opportunities for the people who work and who live here to be able to afford to live here.
Leave those mountains alone.